subscribe to our YouTube channel, Joy Learning TV.
Hello students, welcome again once more to Senior High School Hour on Joy Learning channel. This is your facilitator, Kojo Usuapia, coming to you once again. It's time for GKA, General Knowledge in Art. So get your pads, pens ready because you need to jot a lot of points down. So if you are ready, let's look at today's topic. We are still on ancient art. If you remember, we've already discussed Egyptian art as well as Greek art. Today we want to dwell more on ancient art that has to do with the Orient. So we're discussing Indian art, and this is the part one because we couldn't just discuss everything about Orient art today. So we just take the part one for now. So we'll be treating the Indian art. So look carefully at this particular lesson because there are a lot of facts that you need to put down so that you'll be able to understand the subsequent lessons that we'll be treating in Oriental art. So what are lesson objectives for today? So at the end of this lesson or this period, you, my students, should be able to state the influence of beliefs of people of the Orient. By the Orient, today I'm talking about ancient Indians, on the use of the art forms that they have. So this is our main objective for today. So what do you know about the Orient? So I have a map there for you of Asia, and I'm going to explain what we mean by Orient. It's possible you have a fair idea, but let me just rekindle what you know already. So what we have in front of us is a map of Asia. I think there are about 48 countries in Asia, and you can identify some of them on the map in front of you. So if I may mention a few of them, we have Turkey, Saudi Arabia, China, India, I can see Iran, Pakistan, Japan, North and South Korea, Taiwan. Spend time to look through. I'm sure you'll be able to identify all the 48 countries. So we are talking about the art of these people. Now, what do we mean when we say the Orient? We are referring to people in the far east of the Asian countries. So possibly the far east on this particular map that we have, further of the east, right? So we'll be talking about Japan, that area, China, the Koreas. So possibly the Taiwanese and the Philippines are all on the far east of this particular map. And these are the people we refer to as the people of the Orient, like you saw earlier. So do you know the name referred to for those on the other side of the map? So those in the western part, they are referred to as the Occident. That's a little geography for you, right? So we'll be talking about the people of the Orient. So we're dealing basically with the Oriental art today. Possibly not all of them because we couldn't have just treated all. So we'll just be looking at particular ones. So Orient refers to countries located in the far east parts of Asia, including countries like China, Japan, India, Korea, and like other countries that we identified. So I think you have a fair idea of what we mean by the Orient. Once you have the basics of this idea, then it should be easier for you to talk about which particular people we are going to discuss. So the art and culture of these people are significantly influenced by their religious beliefs. So the major religions that we have around the Orient are basically Buddhism, Hinduism, Jainism, and Islamic religions. So people of the Orient were basically practicing these religions. And these religions influence their art forms so much that until today, they are still being influenced by them. So these are the areas that we are going to look at. And these are the religions that influence the art of the people of the Orient. So we'll start off with treating Indian art for today. We need to get the basics of Indian art. It's so fascinating. We'll be discussing a lot of things about Indian art. There'll be further reading for you because you really need to understand them so that we'll be able to understand the other Orients when we come to those topics. So Indian art basically began around 3000 BC. That's 3000 years before the birth of Christ. And it has flourished until today with so much improvement. If you look at the arts that the Indians are doing today compared to the older times, there's a lot of improvement, and you could understand the way that they've improved so much. So the major religions that greatly influence Indian art is Buddhism and the worship of the god Buddha. Have you heard of Buddha? I have. I'm sure you have. So the people of India, most of them are Buddhists. So Buddhism influenced a lot of their art forms. So Buddhism is believes that there's life after death, and that anyone who dies in this, or in whatever you do in this physical world, will determine your destiny in the metaphysical world. That's the world after, the spiritual world. So do you have any link about this? Do you remember when we were treating a little of Egyptian art? Yes. So there's a physical world, and then there's a metaphysical world. There's a living world, and then there's a spiritual world. So Buddhism also believes in this, that whatever you do in this life, the consequences will follow you after you are dead and gone in the spiritual world. So that's the belief of Buddhism. Again, the soul of each human being passes from one body to the other. So it is believed that after you have passed on in this life, then your spirit or soul will come into another person who is alive. So it's more, you are regenerated. It's a total rebirth. So that is the belief of the Buddhists. Now, what are these art forms that we want to discuss today? So we wouldn't want to treat everything, because we just want to identify the very important ones for today. So we'll be looking at these 4 areas. We'll be looking at sculpture, the sculpture art forms. We'll be looking at architecture, painting, and then as well as textiles. Now, the ancient Indians were so good in these areas, and we would like to take a very good look at them, these particular 4 areas. So we'll start straight off with the sculpture. That's Indian sculpture. Now, most of the figures that you will be seeing as that of Buddha and other gods like Shiva, and these were the ones that were carved, modeled, or casted. So usually they were carved in stones or wood or any other form, and then they were also modeled in clay, as well as casted in metals like brass and others. So these particular figures of their gods, like Buddha and Shiva, were carved, modeled, or casted in these various forms. Now, most of the Buddha figures that we'll be seeing are seated, and this portrays some form of usual meditation or a mood of teaching. So most of the figures that you'll be seeing about Buddha are seated, and then they are meditating. So let me just show you a sample in this. So that is a great statue of Buddha. It's found in Bodhaga. That's in India. I hope Indians are mentioning it right. So that's a huge statue, and that is the statue of Buddha. It's referred to as the Great Buddha statue. So this is a typical example of what we are talking about. So this is a sculpted piece, casted in stone, and then it's Buddha seated, and he's meditating. He's in a meditation mood. So usually this particular statue attracts a lot of Buddhists who go there to pray and the rest. Now, Buddha was also sometimes represented in different postures. Sometimes he's standing, he will be in the standing position. So I have an example there for you of Buddha standing. Again, this one is carved in stone, and you can see the posture, like we mentioned earlier. This particular one is standing. This particular sculpture piece is found, I think, in the National Museum of Asia, and is preserved. It's a very preserved piece of artwork. Now, popular episodes of life and death of Buddha is represented in relief carvings. So there were a lot of relief carvings. I'm sure you remember what relief carvings are. So relief carvings, there were a lot of them on Buddha, and they were used to represent his life and death. Let me show you an example of this particular one, which we'll talk about briefly. So that is a fascinating relief sculpture piece made by this Indian artist. So this is a relief carving in the scenes of life and death of Buddha. And like I said, most of these artworks are found in the National Museum of Asia. So you can see this particular relief carvings are in 4 parts. Let me help you out. So we have, that's 1 palette, that's another palette, making it 2, and that is the 3rd one, and that is the 4th one. So these are carvings, relief carvings made by the Indian artist. Let me try to explain what they mean, because each of them has a particular meaning, and it will just help you understand why the Indians did what they did. So the first one here is the birth, reflects the birth of Buddha. There are a lot of stories behind the birth of Buddha. When he was giving birth, it's believed that his mother, that's the mother in the middle, that's the mother of Buddha in the middle with some maidens. So it was believed that when he was giving birth, there were gods around, and it was on a special garden, and there were a lot of, a whole scenario surrounding it, which you could read later about it. So the first scene there depicts the birth of Buddha. Then the next one here is what they call the enlightenment of Buddha. So if you read about Buddhism, it will tell you about enlightenment, that's awakening. It's a special feeling that they have, and it's believed that it's only Buddha who has reached that stage of enlightenment. So read more about that, but we just want to look at the art piece. So the second one is talking about the enlightenment of Buddha. Then the third one is Buddha preaching or teaching some of his disciples. So he's in a mood and he's doing his teaching. So that's the essence of the 4th palette that I've shown. Then the last one, you can see him there. So this particular one represents the death of Buddha. So it's a whole scene. Buddha is lying there, as you can see, with some disciples around him watching. So this particular 4th scene talks about the death of Buddha. So the birth, the enlightenment, the preaching and teachings of Buddha, and the last one is the death of Buddha. And this is a relief work found in the National Museum of Asia, and it's a very important piece when it comes to Buddhism. So there were other sculptures, of course, like this 3-dimensional figure of Shiva portrayed as a Lord of Dance and also the Lord of Pity. And these ones were also sculpted. Now, these Indians have a lot of gods. So one of them is also Shiva. Like we said, he represents a Lord of Dance and the Lord of Pity. And this is another huge carving found in Shiva. That's a Shiva statue found in Karnataka in India. It's a very huge figure, as you can see. If you compare the size of the human beings in this particular image to the size of the sculpture piece, you could see it's very huge. And just look at the posture, a cross leg, and then 4 limbs. So 2 arms on the right and then 2 arms on the left. And that is a sculpture piece that represents Shiva, and found in Karnataka in India. So there were other gods that we couldn't really look at, but they had a lot of gods. Most of them, they carved them and then worshipped them, sculpted them and worshipped them. Yeah. So there were other sculptures that I want us to identify. This particular one is so fascinating. This is found in a particular valley, or they call it a gorge. The students of geography will say it's a gorge, it's a U gorge. You can see the U nature of the, yeah. So it looks like it's in a valley. And this is called Ajanta Caves, also found in India, of course. And this is a very special cave. You can't talk about Indian art and sculpture and not talk about Ajanta Caves. In fact, there's another one called Ellora Caves, which is about 100 kilometers away from Ajanta, and it has these similarities in the sculptures. So I just picked on this one so that we could just discuss a little more about it. Now, these caves were hidden until as far back when the British were colonizing the Indians. Then a British soldier called John Smith, he was hunting for tigers. They were tiger hunting. And then they chanced by these particular caves. And then what they found inside the caves were so marvelous. So they found a lot of relief carvings and a lot of other carvings of Buddha. So as you can see in the other images, this is a particular relief carving carved straight into the walls of the caves. You could just now imagine how human beings could do this. The Indians were so fascinating about that, they were so good with their sculpture. So this is another piece. Most of these sculptural pieces were basically about Buddha and their religion. If you could remember from the beginning, this is what influenced most of their art. So most of the sculpture works that you'll be seeing are related to Buddha and his teachings. So these are the caves that you need to know about. And that's the Ajanta caves found in India. Again, let's move to painting. The Indians were also into painting, a lot of painting. And like we said earlier, yes, Buddha is still the main subject of their paintings. So Indians decorated most of their temples, the interior and exterior of their temples, with fresco paintings. So this is also another painting also found in the Ajanta caves in India. And by fresco, by now you should have a fair idea. Fresco means wet painting. So when the wall is plastered fresh, then it's painted. And then the wall and the plaster will just dry together, and then it will just be fixed as if they are together. So that's fresco painting, that's wet painting. So these paintings are found in the Ajanta caves, and they are marvelous paintings, of course, of Buddha. Again, there were other themes of painting, like Buddha teaching the Four Noble Truths, commonly referred to as the Dharma. So the Buddhists will understand what the Dharma is. So in the insert is the Buddha painting that's he's teaching his Four Noble Truths, and this particular painting is found in Bihar in India. So look at how the disciples are around him and Buddha in his posture. Could you look at the posture of the hands? Perhaps you understand why Indians do a lot of that, right? Yes, it's a reflection of their religion and their way of culture, and it reflects in their daily lives. So if you see the Indians doing that, it's a form of a noble posture, which was exhibited by Buddha. So that's another painting of Buddha. Now, again, there were also landscape paintings about the miraculous birth of Buddha. If you remember, with the sculpture pieces, I was trying to portray the scene about Buddha and his birth. So this is a painting about the miraculous birth of Buddha. So that's Buddha there, and that's the mother, and these are the maidens, and these are the other gods right there. So this is a painting, and most of these paintings reflected the birth of Buddha as well. So that was one theme of the paintings of Indian art, ancient Indian art, of course. Then there were other themes like Buddha meditating under the Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree is a very special tree, and then it is believed that Buddha got his enlightenment when he was sitting under this Bodhi tree. So this is a painting reflecting Buddha under the tree and then receiving his enlightenment. So that was one of the themes of Indian art, as you can see in the image provided. There were other themes, like themes to honor Buddha, which were found in a lot of temples and monasteries across India. So this particular one is a mural painting. There's a mural painting, is a painting directly done on the wall, found in Hemis Monastery in India. Again, you could see the posture, cross legs with the arms, and the disciples around him, whilst Buddha does his teachings. So that's a typical example of a theme painting done by the Indian artist, which was influenced by their religion. So this takes us to textiles. So let's look at textiles of the Indians. In fact, Indians are known to be one of the world's finest textile makers, and you understand why from this lesson. So since ancient times, Indians have been an export center for clothes and fabrics. Till today, they are still the export center. They make so much fabrics, and they are very particular about what you call their cotton fabrics. Indians are fantastic with cotton fabrics. So there are just two samples for you on the screen. That's one there. I think it's an elephant with human figures and other figures on it. And then down there are variety of cotton fabrics. And India is known to, yes, have a lot of very good textile makers. Now, most of these textiles were, like we said, were woven in cotton. There were a few instances where they made silk. I'm sure when they had a little influence with the Chinese, then they started making silk. But Indians, or the ancient Indians, were masters in making or weaving of their cotton. So there's a traditional weaving loom on the first image there. So the threads or the yarns are hanged all over, and then there's someone weaving. On the right-hand side of your screen is an old lady trying to spin the yarns. So they were spinning the yarns themselves, and then they take it to the loom and then prepare the fabric from it. So already you can see fascinating designs on the fabric. They are so good at it, so good at it. If you want any fabric that has to do with cotton, just get it from Indians. They are the best. Okay, so again, we have they did so many things on their woven, what do you call it, textiles or fabrics that they made. So either they paint it with a hand. So woven materials were either painted with a hand or printed as a form of decoration. So the lady you see there is actually painting with a brush. They had other forms of tools on materials that they used to paint. So they use brushes and special dyes that they prepared for themselves. So they use these dyes and then directly printed on the various fabrics that they had made. So that's an example of a lady painting directly on the fabric. So you can see the one that she's done already at the background that she's hung. So it's a fair indication of how well they were with their textiles. They are very good with their textiles. So you can look at the background of samples all over. And all these fabrics made of cotton, and the designs in it were painted directly. Okay, so that's one. Then, Indians are known to be one of the best block printing makers. Indian is possibly the origins of block printing. They're fantastic with their block printing. So as you see in the image over there, I just showed you two samples of two different people trying to make a fabric using they are printing the fabric using the block printing method. So you can look directly at them, and so far they are not done, but you can see the fantastic designs that are coming out. There's no one beyond the Indians when it comes to block printing. They are fantastic. Take time to look at other images, and you see how fascinating that they are. And in fact, they have so many styles depending on which region of India that you come from. They have their own traditional ways. You know, there are a lot in numbers. Indians are very huge number of people. So their traditions and the way where they come from influence their block printing methods. And there are diverse and different ways that they do their work. So you can just take a look at them on the internet, possibly. They also did some embroidery. They used embroidery techniques of fabric making. And you can see in the image, they basically use their thread and the needles to sew these embroidery directly onto the fabrics. So that's a lady in the first image fashioning out a very nice design on the fabric that she's made. And on the right-hand side is another one. Also, most of them are handmade. Most of these embroidery techniques that you see are handmade. That shows you the level of skill of these ancient Indians and what they do to today. They have not stopped these things. They still maintain their traditional way of doing things. Unlike other people of other parts of the world, they still stick to their various artworks when it comes to textiles. So what are the uses of these textiles of the Indians? So the first one you can identify there is that they use most of these products for their clothing and turbans. So at the top here, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And then down there, you can see some ladies in their traditional dress. And some males with also their traditional dress. If you don't know what the turbans are the one on their heads, in the form of a big cloth piece. I'm sure you've seen this in the Indian movies, right? So they have this turban around their neck, and it's so nice, and it's very particular about these Indians. It identifies them from other people. One thing very good about Indians is that they still maintain their way of life and culture till today. If you happen to go to India, most of the dresses that they wear, majority of the people still put on their traditional dresses. Unlike some of us who have changed, we are still wearing Western clothing and the rest. But Indians have maintained their traditional dresses, and that's what is making them so special. So yeah, that is the traditional Indian dresses that you can see. There are a lot of them. These are just two samples. There are a lot of in particular regions. There are different types of dressings, and then you can see. I'm sure you have seen other Indian dresses that look different from this, and even to today there are still improvements in them. Okay, again, these textiles were used for wall hangings and for decorating temples. So that's a temple which has been colorfully decorated with some of the cloths. So you can see some of the textiles on this one right here, the table, and then some hanging all around. Yes, to make the interior of this particular temple very colorful. So that is one thing that they also did, using these textiles to decorate their temples. And it's a very beautiful piece, as you can see. Now, other uses were also that most of these textiles were used for bed sheets. So they could print on them, they could do embroidery on them, they could also do the hand painting on them, and then use them for bed sheets, for blankets, as well as carpets. So in the insert, there is a traditional Hindi blanket, or what we call a rag. And you can see this particular one is hand painted. So you can see the painting of this particular Hindi blanket, not a Buddha blanket. So this is a Hindi. Remember, we said the religions of India influence most of their artworks, and Buddhism and Hinduism is part of their religion. So this is a particular Hindi blanket that you can take a look at. So there are other materials apart from the bed sheets, blankets, and carpets that we've mentioned. There are other textiles that are made by these Indians. So this takes us to architecture. So again, most of the architectural works were basically monasteries and assembly halls for worship. So the Indians built these temples for worship, and then they decorated it nicely in very good architectural pieces, like you see in your insert. So this is the Thingske Monastery in Ladakh in India. It's a very popular site when you go to Ladakh. It's a very popular site of the history of India, and this is a particular monastery found there. So you can look at the structures that were built. So you can see that these monasteries were built on rocks. You can see the rocks all over. And sometimes these stones were arranged to build these monasteries. So as you can see, they are arranged stones to build up the structures. So this is one major way that they built their monasteries. Again, earlier temples were constructed from stone and wood. So that's how sometimes they constructed. That's the very, very old ones. Then later, there are rock-out architectural structures fashioned from the sides of cliffs, which were also constructed. So look at this cliff, this particular one in your image. So it's a cliff, and they've carved out these temples from the cliff. So it's a rock-out architectural piece, which is not an easy thing to do. So you had very, very good Indian artists or sculptors who could do this. So that's a very nice architectural piece that you can see. You can see the way the rocks blend into the buildings right there from the base. I can't think of how they function out these particular buildings, but they are very special. And these are some of the particular architectural pieces of the Indians that we want you to look at. So that's the Phukta monastery, also found in Ladakh in India. So read more about it. There are other monasteries which are also rocked out. So you can take a look at them when you do your references. Now, we cannot mention Egyptian architectural art without mentioning the Great Stupa at Sanchi, which was built by Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BC. This is a very, very, very popular architectural piece of India, built by the Emperor Ashoka in the 3rd century BC. So you can see the structure, unique, and it's basically a temple built for the monks. So that's the entrance to the monk, to the particular structure, and then there are inset of some of the details. You can see sculptural pieces around the pillars. So this is a particular pillar in front, that's here, and these are some of the details on it. And it's a very popular site visited by a lot of Indians and people outside India, tourists who come over to look at this particular great building. And it's a very, very, very important architectural piece of the Indians. Okay, so this takes us to metalwork and jewelry. Metalwork and jewelry of the Indians can be traced as far back as 7,000 to 550,000 BC. 7,000 years to 5,500 years before the birth of Christ, the Indians were doing jewelry. So that's a long time ago. So even though we started earlier that, yes, Indian art started around 3000 BC, they were doing their jewelry a long time before we even discovered some of their artworks. So this was the period in which they were doing their jewelry. Now, materials used basically were seeds and shells right from the beginning. In ancient Neolithic times, the Indians were using seeds and shells for their jewelry works. Then later, they had some special stones which they heated, and then when they heated, it turned into a reddish color form, and that was what they were using for their jewelry. So that was the beginning. Then later, artisans began using other materials other than the seeds and the stones and the other materials that they found. They started using bronze, copper, silver, and gold to make necklaces, head metal bands, for bangles, bracelets, and other fashioned out jewelry. So this particular image that you see is a preserved Indian jewelry kept in the British Museum. It's a very special piece. And the one that you see here is a plug. It's used to plug the ears. And then the one below are special toe-made metals. And they are made in silver. So the Indians were particular about their jewelry. They even had jewelry on their toes, which they put on their toes. And most of these ones were for the royals. If you look a little at Indian movies, you see some of these things, the way they decorate their ankles and toes and stuff. You see some of these inside. So these are particular jewelry that we can see among the Indian artisans. Then again, you can see this particular image. Indians are very particular about their weddings. So these images that you see are jewelry basically made for the weddings. And you can see a lot of jewelry around these ladies. So some around their necks, their bangles on their hands, some in their hair. I wish I knew the exact names of these, but I know they have special names for them. So they are all over the body, the head, some even hanging from the nose to the ear. So many of them. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. If you've been watching Indian movies, like I'm continually saying, you see some of these jewelry that they were specially made for wedding events. Now, they also made a lot of magnificent works made to decorate structures in buildings, such as doors, windows, luxurious furniture, mirrors, or mirror with bases and handles, as well as chests and boxes. There are so many other things that they made, but this is just to mention a few. So you can see a metal door. This door is purely made of metal. And just look at the intricate designs made on this metal door. So just can't think of how this particular thing is made. But this was what the Indians were doing with their jewelry or metal works. So they fashioned out these designs on these metals for their doors. And then again, there's a mirror in the second image here. And around it is another fashioned metal, and the mirror is plugged into it. And then here, the third one is a comb. Yes, it's a comb. And actually, this particular comb is made up of two different things, three, I think. So there's a ruby at the top here. Ruby is a precious jewel, and this is gold, pure gold. And then you have the base here, the comb itself, which is also made of gold. So we have the ruby at the top, like we mentioned earlier. Then we have the gold at the top here, and the base, making the comb. And then we have the third one, that's ivory, possibly from the elephant. So that's the ivory, that's what is carved out into the image. So these were made for royals. So Indians were very particular about their metalworks. The last one you see there is a chest where they put in their jewels and other precious artifacts or belongings. So that's the fourth one that you see over there. So a lot of works around the Indian art, which has to do with metalworks and jewelry, were very extensive and very, very well made, like we've seen so far. I also want to show you some daggers, swords, and rifles, and which were made both for domestic and then foreign or export consumption. So up here, I have an ancient Indian sword. There are two of them actually, and these swords were for royals, specially fashioned out and very durable. And the Indians had their own way of making their swords, and this is just one of them. There are a whole host of other swords that they made. Now, in the second image are rifles or guns, made also fashioned out with metals by the Indians. So you can see the variety that we have right there in the image. So yes, they were fashioning out daggers, swords, rifles, and other objects for both local use as well as for export. So I want you to answer these questions about Indian art. So the question says, discuss briefly how each of the following art forms of India were influenced by the religious beliefs. So you are going to take a look at sculpture, architecture, and painting, these particular three areas. Let me help you out just how to go about this particular question. So we said from the beginning that, yes, a lot of Indian art were influenced by their religious beliefs. So mostly Buddhism influenced a lot of their works, as well as Hinduism and other forms of religious beliefs. So take sculpture, mention some of the sculptural pieces made for Buddha and the rest that were represented in their temples and in public places for worship, and that those factors. So just mention those ones, and that will help you solve the first question about sculpture. Again, in architecture, remember that there's a lot of temples and monasteries built in honor of these various deities like Buddha and the rest. So locate some of these architectural pieces around India, and then mention or show some of these artworks. Mention a few names about these architectural pieces and where they can be found. Again, look at the paintings. Most of the paintings, like we discussed earlier, was basically about Buddha and his life. So look at these paintings and then look at how to answer these questions, and just give us how these religions influence the way that they did their artworks. So I believe if you do that, you should be able to answer these questions very, very wholeheartedly. So send these answers to me once again, and let me take a look at them, and let's see how it will be, I'll be able to comment on them as and when I see them. So we meet in the next, or the part 2 of this particular Oriental art. Today we just treated Indian art. We'll be looking at also Chinese art as well as Japanese art. They are very related, so we'll be looking at the two together. So till we meet, this has been Kojo Usuapia coming to you once again. I've been your facilitator for general knowledge in art. So keep on reading your books, and we'll meet the next time to discuss the next topic.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Joy Learning TV.